The Montreal Canadiens have been struggling a bit as of late, but what will this mean for the team at the trade deadline? Saba of Locked On Canadiens joins us to discuss that next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canadiens, Saba. And Laura, been a little bumpy ride lately for the Habs. They've come close in a lot of games. What's been the difference between the last few weeks and the beginning part of the season?
So the Canadiens, honestly, they've been losing a lot of games, and that's the reality of the standings. But if you look a little bit closer, the underlying numbers are getting a lot better. So they're playing much better 5-on-5. And I'd say now we're in a maybe 15-game stretch where that's what they're doing. They're losing the game, which is what you want because you want the higher draft pick, but their even strength play is getting better. And I know we're going to get into that in a little bit in the next segment, but there's a couple of key players that are stepping up, that are improving. So overall, I would say the last 15 games are infinitely better than the maybe 20 or 30 games before that, because in that scenario, like previously, what was happening was they would come out of the gate, they'd be able to get to a lead, or they might hang with a good team. Let's say maybe they don't have the lead, but they're hanging with the team. But one thing would go wrong and then everything would unravel. It would either be a weak penalty kill or a power play that didn't deliver or an easy goal that was let in or something like that. And then everything would come off the rails and the Habs would not be able to regroup. Like there were a lot of games, and there were like maybe 5 or 6 in a row even, where they would give up a 2, 3, even 4 goal lead sometimes. So there's a lot of improvement to the way that they're playing on the ice, but they're still struggling with a lot of injuries. That's another key component of this season. This is a third year in a row of a disproportionate number of injuries. And obviously everything's not hunky-dory, right? But their 5-on-5 play is much better. Like their special teams are still struggling. The defense isn't necessarily playing a cohesive way. You know, they're sort of scraping by the skin of their teeth, but their top line is performing, which is why you're getting a lot more of those high danger chances, which is why your underlying numbers are showing the Canadiens are playing better, but they're losing a lot of games, a lot. And the last couple were in a shootout. They won against Arizona, and then there were a few losses before that. But the trend is encouraging.
All right, so who are some of these players that are making Martin St. Louis feel a little bit better about the long-term situation here in Montreal?
I think the key one, I will talk about Suzuki in a second, but the key improvement is that I almost called him Yaroslav. Juraj Slafkovsky has stepped up in a big way. This is his breakout year. This year, you're seeing all the things the Canadiens saw in him when they drafted him first overall. His on-ice awareness has improved dramatically since last season, because last season, it's not like he wasn't trying. He also wasn't on the top line with Nick Suzuki. He wasn't being played, I think, in the situations that we wanted to see him in, but his awareness has increased dramatically. His on-ice presence, every single shift he's delivering. He's playing physically, he's playing intelligently, he's playing with speed, and he's showing his skill. And he's not afraid to use his body, whereas before, I feel like, last year there was a little bit of immaturity to that. He was a little bit reckless. He was still playing physically. That was, but it was a bit reckless. It was a bit, he got injured so many times. There were a lot of keep your head up kid moments, but he's really, really broken out, and he has been the key to the power play improving. It's not dramatically improved. They didn't go from like 32nd to the first or whatever, but they were, I think, 29th. And now they're middle of the pack. They're hovering around 15, 16, like generally speaking, that's their trend. And he's been the key. Like, he's been the threat that they've been able to offer on that power play. So he's one of them. And then Nick Suzuki, if you look at his numbers this year, he's having a Selke caliber year, right? He's always stepping up. Like, he has, he's still breaking records. He's still, he's still Nick Suzuki. He's still improving every little bit of his game every single day. But it's really like the defensive aspect of his game has added another layer to it. And his numbers truly are showing that this kid he's got that defensive two-way center potential in the future.
So we're less than a week away now from the NHL trade deadline. You mentioned that the Canadiens want to improve their draft position. Who are some of the players that they may be looking to deal at the trade deadline, and what are they looking to get in return?
So the players that I think they have to offer, whether or not that is for the good or not, definitely David Savard. They like him a lot, but they are entertaining calls on him. Absolutely Yoel Armia, whose contract is a little bit of a deterrent, but it's like a new guy, after 2 years of him struggling, all of a sudden this season he's back and he's earning that contract. So he's another one. Obviously they won't be able to unload an injured guy's contract because this is not the time for it. So Christian Dvorak is out of the question. Jake Allen, they're still taking calls on him. I don't know what calls have been coming in, to be honest, but they are still listening. And then who was my key? Oh, Josh Anderson. Yes, that was the one where They would love to unload that contract, but he's struggling a lot. So I don't necessarily see a GM take him on unless they believe, I can fix him. Unless they have that mentality. So I believe everybody's kind of on the trading block for the right price. The thing with Kent Hughes, though, is that he has proven that if you don't give him the price he wants, he just won't make the trade. Like, he's not going to trade just because that's what he's going to get, right? Like, he's decided, he's looked at your team, he either wants a specific pick or he wants a prospect he's got an eye on. And if he's not getting that, he's not making that deal. You go find your goaltender elsewhere. You go find your, shot blocking defenseman elsewhere. So I really don't necessarily think that, Montreal Canadiens fans, let me put it this way. Montreal Canadiens fans are not expecting a whole lot of fireworks at the trade deadline. Every piece that moves for us is it's like a cherry on the top, because we know that it's going to be tough. And we also know a lot of these players, they still have at least a year left on their contract. So it is possible that they don't get dealt now, but Kent Hughes has something in the works for the NHL draft. Now, that said, we are recording this on Sunday night. We also have recorded our own show already. I fully expect that at 8 o'clock in the morning, which is when Kent Hughes likes to drop these bombs, there will be a trade announced somewhere, which is kind of what happened with Monahan. I think it was 9:30. It wasn't 8 o'clock, but it was pretty early. But this is what he likes to do all the time. So I think Sean Monahan was their biggest prize that they had to trade, and for very good reason. He's been phenomenal despite being injury prone. He's really fixed a lot of problems on the Canadiens. So, good luck to him on the Jets. But I think everybody pretty much he'll entertain calls on everybody. The only untouchables I would say at this point are like Gooley, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky. That's pretty much it. I think he'll even the guys he just traded for, like Alex Newhook or whatever, he'll take calls on everybody. But if you don't pay the right price, he's just going to hang up the phone.
And what are they looking to add? Is it mostly picks? Or if they're adding prospects, what position would they be looking to fortify?
So in terms of picks, I think they want as many as possible because they're getting close to that point where they're no longer going to be picking in the top 10. Like this year, I'm pretty sure it's a lock that they're going to pick in the top 10, and they even have a shot at the top 5. But they're getting close. So they want to stockpile as many picks as possible in the next couple of drafts. When it comes to prospects, it's really interesting because they seem to fall in love with a player rather than want to fill a need, which is kind of how the opposite of how they approach the draft. Like the draft, it was like, well, we need defense and goaltenders, so we'll just pick defense and goaltenders, and we don't care who's a better forward that's out there. But in terms of like who they want in return, like they have a very specific type of player that they like. The guy played at Northeastern, like for sure. He's like, I know that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but they're like, it feels like they fall in love with players rather than filling a need. But what I would like to see them do is pick up middle six players and a little bit of, I would say like maybe middle or bottom pairing defensemen, because there's a lot that's made of like the Habs lacking elite talent. Well, with the players that you have to trade, you're not getting elite prospects back in return, but you could get solid, like promising middle six, middle pairing defensemen or forwards.
All right, Laura, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
So I am one of the co-hosts of Locked On Canadiens. You can find Locked On Canadiens anywhere you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. We are on Twitter as LO_Canadiens, and I'm on all social media at The Active Stick. Thank you so much, Gil.
Hey, thank you, Laura. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive prop bets, and more. And look, it's not just the NBA. You've got college basketball. You've got hockey. And of course, baseball spring training underway right now. Check out the odds for your favorite hockey team now on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.